Okay, making video. Yeah, kind of a different subject, I think. I think I'm making one. Yeah, yeah. Off to... yeah, it's just such a... It sucks. Anyway, yeah, really. Yeah, it's annoying. Obligations and responsibilities and have-tos and all this stuff just suck. Anyway, so Warble's on a lot made a, he does this playing radio program thing, which I generally speaking don't like, but sometimes it's an interesting conversation just because it's related to something I had been thinking about. So, I had been doing some thinking about this whole solar energy thing. It's always sort of annoyed me because, my understanding of the science is that solar energy isn't quite there yet. That even though it has this, passiveness, and it's certainly environmentally beneficial in the long-termish kind of way to look at it. Obviously, there's environmental cost up front in the production of panels, but once they're in place, they kind of do their thing and are fairly efficient if their durability numbers can be trusted. So anyway, it's a saver in terms of environmental cost, I think, net for sure. Yeah, pretty sure. It's got to be better than coal anyway, substantially better in terms of its environmental impact. But cost is still kind of, it's still there. I mean, they are expensive, and that's just the truth still. Anyway, so they have all these rackets going on now. First the first statement that seems weird is that the country's going solar, and most of this solar is on individual houses, which I'll get to, which is the subject really I want to get to. These countries that are using solar, their electrical costs are going up instead of down. So the most expensive places to get electricity are places that have highly invested in solar, like Germany and Australia now. But the weird thing is that their solar is all on this individual house thing rather than any kind of solar plant. So solar farm, and that doesn't make any sense. If you think about it, you're saying if this is cost effective or productive or money, if this is a money maker for the individual, certainly a capitalist would have already taken advantage of that, built a farm and just sold pieces of the farm's production to individual users. So it just doesn't, like I said, doesn't intuitive. It just doesn't make any sense that we're doing it this highly inefficient way, where you put individual panels on roofs that don't move, that have no, they don't do the directionality thing, and usually don't have a perfect orientation to the sun's position. So you're minimizing the effectiveness of you're compromising the effectiveness of the solar panels substantially by having them in a rigid configuration, not perfectly oriented to the sun. And so obviously a solar farm could get 100% of the efficiency of at least positioning and maximize output. And so there would be at least a 40 or maybe 50% decrease in cost through farming, just on the positioning issue. And then you got the controller issue, which is this idea of feeding electricity back into the grid. And so you have these individual devices to convert and push electricity back into the grid, which, are also expensive. Maintenance problems, all kinds of other liabilities of doing that individually. So there's just no cost effectiveness in having, thousands of controllers versus one big controller. So another huge element of efficiency. So you're saying that, yeah, okay, with these huge elements, these 50%, 100% cuts in costs of production, there's no reason why the greedy capitalists wouldn't take advantage. And if consumers were doing, if this was working. So obviously consumers aren't winning by doing this. These conversion plans are just rackets, and it really has nothing to do with efficiency. It just has to do with exploiting people with new technology, religion, and making them think there's going to be a benefit, that they're going to win. So it's just like the capitalists are just saying we can make more money screwing individual customers than we can screwing them massively. And that's really the only equation that's taken place in this whole thing. And it's, when you think about it, this is just a more example of how we as a people have just given up on doing anything rationally, sensibly and efficiently. And even facing global warming, we can't even do this. We can't even do this meager effort with any kind of rationality. We're just going to let capitalists ruin it, turn it into something highly inefficient, and screw us over. So it would appear there's no way of avoiding very wet feet. So I guess I'm going to just have to get my shoes off and do this the hard way. So anyway, I shall be back and such. Wow, this really got washed out here pretty bad. Ugh, there's a lot of water coming down here. So it was extensive flooding and such. So I'm not surprised that there was water somewhere. Anyway, so I guess I made the point, right? I mean, it's just this, how do we do efficiency? Why can't we do efficiency? Why can't, why are we always subjected to doing things in this backward manner, not recognizing what's really happening? Why you get gamed, and we can't convince other people of the game, and so we have no way of escaping the game. And it's just so disappointing. So let's see, what do I need to say anymore on this subject? I mean, the trick with solar is, as I've thought about doing it, it's just the storage problem. You have this battery problem, and you have to, pay to, maintain your storage capacity. And, because a car battery is a nice device for starting cars, but it really, it can't hold nearly enough electricity. It can provide a lot of electricity in bursts, but it really can't store a lot of electricity. Kind of a neat little pond being created there. Anyway, that's where all that water came from. Where was I? Yeah. So that's the real limitation in terms of doing the off-grid thing, is that you really are, Warble sort of exposed the problem the other day when he was, could only use his electric jigsaw for 5 minutes, and he was going to wipe out his grid because he used the jigsaw for 5 minutes. So, it does make it all kind of obvious that, solar has substantial limitations in terms of delivering the volume, of electricity over the whole period of a day, accounting for the usages, the more substantial usages after dark and such. So, So, and the real downside of the people moving towards solar is that as it happens, the people buying regular grid electricity still have to finance the infrastructure, and so, prices end up going up. and then they end up charging more for you just being a customer. So no matter how much you use, you end up getting charged a service fee, which ends up becoming a larger and larger percentage of the bill. And so instead of paying for what you're using, you're basically subsidizing the heavy users, and you're getting nailed. So anyway, I mean, this is all just rackets. It's just racket on top of racket on top of racket. So I guess I can lead this into a broader economics discussion. I do keep up with the modern mystics over the peak commentaries, and none of them have been thought-provoking enough or reaction-provoking enough to say I'll react. I mean, he's generally agreeable to his theme that the rich just get rich on the creation of debt liabilities, and that's really all that's taking place, is that you create a debt, you create a beneficiary of the debt. You create somebody who's going to make a living off the obligation. So they won't have to do any further work than get the guy to sign the debt contract, and they'll make their profit. And that's the biggest industry in the world, is making money off debt contracts. And that all that money has its evidence, the reality of the debt in stock market, let's say. It all ends up there in the end. That's where digits go to die, and bank digits. And bank digits are all created by a debt contract. And they're all supposed to be eventually convertible into cash, into something of value. And what causes crashes in economic systems is when the debt digits are all attempted to be converted too quickly. So everybody wants their conversion to cash, too soon, and the cash doesn't have time to go cycling through all the debt contracts that need to be resolved, all the exchanges back and forth. So it's like if there was only two people in the world and we interacted in debt contracts, you could see that in the end, it would all resolve out. I could have 10 of your IOUs and you could have 10 IOUs for me, and if we went back and forth, the cash would all resolve. But that resolution, if it doesn't have time to work its way out, there's a crisis. If I ask for 5 of my IOUs to be resolved, and without the other IOUs that I owe being resolved commensurate to that action. So if I ask for all my 5 and ask for all the cash that exists to resolve my debts, to resolve the IOUs I hold, then there's no cash left over to resolve the other IOUs, because I'm holding it all. I've hoarded it. And so this is what initiated the crisis of the 1929 crash, was the fact that there wasn't enough time to resolve the debt, and there was a run on the bank for the cash. The banks couldn't provide the cash. The bankruptcies took place, the huge losses took place, and the whole economy was driven into the ground in terms of there was no capital to continue running any of the businesses. So it just created a cycle of unemployment, lack of consumption because nobody had any money, and all of that just drove it into a standstill, and it had to be re-grinded, re-energized. The battery had to be recharged to get it going again. But it's all a fallacy you're living on at the moment. So right now we have arrangements that don't make much sense. $7 trillion worth of FDIC assets insured, with a fund of $30 billion. Obviously, it's not going to take much of a crisis to where that fund will run out and where you're going to get the money, so to speak. And the thing that's taken place just recently to provoke all this booming in the debt market, the stock market, was created by this thing called quantitative easing, which was just a mechanism where the government borrowed digits from the banks, and through that borrowing created more wealth for the wealthy, more IOUs to be held by someone who claims ownership of debt. And so essentially that's all it was a way of issuing bonds without issuing a real bond. And this is just me no likey. I'm going to have to run it, to do it. I just don't like this one's wobbling. Oh, I don't like doing that. Anyway, you don't like it, too bad. But I'm lucky to get across without taking my shoes off, so it's good. Shoes are still dry. Anyway, so what happened basically is the Federal Reserve through the banks initiated a debt contract where the Federal Reserve bought its own debt. Yeah, that's right. It doesn't make much sense. So that's what it did. But all it was really doing is just buying assets off the stock market so that people had more, the rich would have more cash because you just paid them digits for the stuff they held, and now they have cash to go bid up the price of other assets. So it was just engineered to create a bubble in the stock market to give people the illusion of wealth and create the illusion that everything's going to be okay because they need to restore confidence to get consumption back up. But the funny thing is, well, not funny, the horrid thing is that the only consumption that's been increased is the consumption of the rich. And their consumption is in investment in nonsense. They'll have their living room redone, or they'll have their backyard re-landscaped, or they'll have some other thing. They'll have no social value done to their comfortable life. Or they'll buy some, $200,000 car or some other kind of thing that has really nothing to do with, it has no measure of value in the economy that we all live in. It doesn't make our food cheaper or more efficient. It doesn't make the technologies we all depend on, like cable or internet, any more functional. It's not that kind of investment. So the worst kind of spenders have been released to give people the illusion that employment's okay, we're going to survive, things to be all right, and it's only a temporary bubble in consumption because that debt may eventually have to be resolved very quickly in a crisis. Those digits are going to come due, and what are they going to use to pay them? And the only real choice is going to be huge tax increases, which will be disruptive, or you have to play the game of just printing more cash. And printing more cash is that's not an answer. Traffic. I don't know when the May 5th. Oh, so it is this it is tomorrow? God damn it. I didn't know it was tomorrow. Sunday? Shit. I'm really not ready for the fishing derby. I just got over the other thing. So anyway, look at all the signs. It's all pretty ribbons. Look at the pretty ribbons. Look, ribbons. Celebrationary ribbons. Police! Ah! Oh, just gives me a fright. So apparently the pond's full of big, monstrous, humongous fishes. That poor goose is doomed. Any minute now, big fish will eat it. Yeah. Yeah, they do put some pretty good fish in here. So anyway, man, I really did want to. May 5th. It's Sunday, right? Sunday? I hope it's Sunday because I really can't do it tomorrow. But I can't do it Sunday either. I'm up all night in Chinese yet. Fuck. I have to figure this out. Anyway. Shoot. I thought it was going to be next week. Yeah, that's what I thought. But anyway. I've got little porta parties and such. Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Starting with this QE thing. Yeah, so they got this $4 trillion that the federal government, it's a lot of money, trust me, $4 trillion is a huge amount of money, a huge amount of assets to be buying off the stock market. So that's why the rich are getting richer. And they'll only get richer, again, if you keep creating more debt. The debt pile has to keep growing for the stock market to grow. The overall debt pile. And not just the yearly debt pile. You know. And it really is just evidence of how we're gaining less and less, regular people, I'm saying, have no value in the economy anymore, no investment in it. And effectively, where I wanted to go with this, but I really don't have time, is the rich could replace us with vending machines that mimicked our behavior. So they could still sell commercials, they could still get us to drink the Coke, and they could manufacture the Coke and sell it to the machine for a profit. I mean, as long as they get the machine to sign the debt contract, they make money. And they force the machine to go to work. But that's the joke of it, is that this doesn't have anything to do with humanity anymore. It doesn't have anything to do with organizing a civilization for the welfare of sentient beings. It's just a machine. The whole economy is just a mechanism for making debt holders richer. And it doesn't do anything else. It doesn't have any other function. It's been reduced to that, simple dysfunction. All right, well, I'm going to get a little bit of a wet foot here, it would appear. Let's see, is there any convenient rock I could throw out there? Maybe this one here. But this is the irony of our existence, is that everybody's sort of just, not everybody, but obviously the majority of people have bought the lie, that we're somehow in this together, that the rich man is on our side, Google isn't evil, which is hilarious, and so we're just pretty much doomed to servitude, to that false notion of reality. I gotta step really quickly there and then get over to that big rock. And I'm gonna get a minorly wet foot. Oh, I just hurt my back though. Minorly wet. Yeah, it was a little bit wet. Oh God, that's really bad for my back. So this part I did. All right. Cripes. Keep saying it. I'm getting way too old and disinterested in this shit. I'm doing this for what? Why? So I can do it again tomorrow? Wrong attitude, Gary. Wrong attitude. Yeah. Bad, Gary. You're thinking realistically again. Stop that. Fall into the fantasy. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, till next time.